Namaskar, myself Vedant Sharan, convener of Think India, welcoming you. This is a grand moment because we have in between Mr. Pramod Kohli ji and Advocate Ravindra Rajata ji between us. First, I have to tell about Mr. Pramod Kohli ji, Chairman of CAT, Central Administration Tribunal, and joined bar at Jammu in 1972, expert in constitutional, civil and taxation law, legal advisor to Sri Mata Vaishno Devi Shrine Board. As a judge, provided service to High Court of Jammu and Kashmir, Jharkhand, and Punjab and Haryana High Court. In 2011, Sir is elevated for the Chief Justice of Sikkim High Court, and he also designated as a senior advocate in February 1991. And come to the Mr. Ravindra Kumar Rajata ji, senior advocate designated by Honorable Uttarakhand High Court in 2013. He started practicing before the Supreme Court in 2013. Now regularly practicing at the Supreme Court of India and Uttarakhand High Court. Expert in constitutional law, mining and forest law, land-related law, criminal law, property law, and service law. And represent various legal advisors to the various eminent enterprises such as ITC Limited, PepsiCo India, Nestle India, and various other institutes. In between us, Mr. Jasmeet Kaur to facilitate Mr. Kohli ji with the flower, the campus law center. Mr. Raghav ji, Aligarh Muslim University to facilitate Rajata ji. Requesting Senior Advocate Ravindra Rajata ji to come on the dais and start the session, please.
Respectable Pramod Kohli ji, students here, organizers of Think India. At the outset, I'm thankful to all of you to be here, to invite me here to express my views on the issue that is tribunalization so far in the play. I'm a lawyer, and you have done a trick to the whole issue. What trick you have played? You have incidentally placed a man along with me who has played a very long inning in the judiciary. This is Pramod Kohli. This controversy is not new one, and now there is a petition in the Supreme Court, and containing a substantial, robust challenge to the Finance Act 2017, whereby 26 central legislations have been affected and 26 tribunals which had been created in various central laws now the manner of appointment of the presiding officers and members of the tribunal have been affected. And added to that, the central government has been vested with the power to frame rules, and the rules are contemplating the appointment of the members of the tribunal. So leaving apart that, what will happen to the Supreme Court, let us ponder over the journey so far. Constitution of India was in force on 26th of November 1949. So before Constitution, what was the position? Because in the Constitution of India itself, the theory of basic structure was propounded in Keshwanand Bharti for the first time in 1973. And the basic structure theory postulates independence of judiciary. Independence of judiciary does mean that anything which happens to influence the independence of judiciary, which was held to be unconstitutional because the judiciary was contemplated to be insulated from the executive interference and the legislative interference. So the manner of appointment was also claimed. How the manner of appointment of the judges was also claimed by the judiciary within its domain. In 1947, when the country became independent, at that very time, we were governed by Government of India Act 1935. And the Government of India Act 1935, the central legislature, Dominion legislature, has contemplated, has created, has visualized an Indian Independence Act. This was empowered to make amendments, necessary amendments in Government of India Act 1935. But what is the position in Government of India Act regarding the tribunals and the courts? That's interesting to watch. In Government of India Act, because when we had our constitution, the Constitution of India commenced. Prior to that, the courts in India, the subordinate courts in India, were placed under the subordination of High Court. There was nothing like prerogative writs, etc. And when the courts, there was a three-tier system. One is the civil courts or revenue courts. Then the second tier is High Court. Third one is the Federal Court or Privy Council. But the word, there was a section. Here I will point out that in Government of India 1915 as well, there is a section that is 117, wherein the courts were placed under the supervisory jurisdiction of the High Court. When Government of India Act 1935 came, then 224 of the section 224, the courts were placed under the supervisory jurisdiction of the High Court. So that was the situation. But there was nothing like placing the tribunals under the supervisory jurisdiction of the High Court, neither in the Government of India Act 1915 nor in Government of India 1935. So prior to Constitution of India 1950, we had Constitution of India since 1950. For the first time, Article 227 provides that the courts and tribunals are under the supervisory jurisdiction of the High Court. And prior to 1950, in 1947, two statutes were enacted and enforced. That is one, Industrial Dispute Act, and the second is UP Industrial Dispute Act 1947. That's in United Province, there was a state statute, that is UP Industrial Dispute Act 1947. And there is a section 3 small b. and 3 small d. So in 1947, the Industrial Tribunal and Labour Courts, these are tribunals, trappings of the judicial system, trappings of the judiciary, these are the judicial forums. So these labour courts and industrial tribunals were permissible, or the state government was empowered to issue an executive order to constitute a labour court and industrial tribunal. So this was the power structure at that time, so far as the appointment of the tribunals are concerned. And under the statute, it was an executive power. Once there is an industrial dispute, and industrial dispute is not resolved during the conciliation forum, the state government used to create an industrial tribunal or labour court manned by a presiding officer, and the disputes were referable to that tribunal. That type of power is sustainable in Indian constitution or not, this was never debated or never decided. But one thing is discernible, that the power, the judicial power is one amongst the 3 powers of a state. That is legislative powers, executive power and the judiciary. So it's a sovereign power. Constitution, in the constitution, there is again a three-tier arrangement. One is the civil court, the other one is the high court, and the third one is the Supreme Court of India. Chapter 4 of part 5 relates to the Union Judiciary. Under Article 226, I'll come to that later on, but 32 jurisdiction, that is fundamental right enforcement, or 226 jurisdiction or 227 jurisdiction, these were the jurisdictions which came into being, came into existence after the constitution only. The prerogative rights were given to the court by the constitutional maker. But the real problem has arisen in this country regarding the jurisdiction, the original and appellate jurisdictions, which had been traditionally and conveniently being exercised by the civil courts or the high court or the Supreme Court. Original and appellate jurisdiction, because the constitutional powers, quo warranto, writ of mandat, these are the constitutional powers. So, if you look into the Union Judiciary Provisions, Chapter 4 of Part 5, so 133 and 134 are the appellate, civil and criminal appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court from the criminal proceedings and judicial proceedings of the High Court. 137 is a power of review. So if you read 109 of Civil Procedure Code, 1908, so that's an appellate jurisdiction with the Supreme Court. So these appellate powers, if you monitor the development of law, whether it is excise matter, taxation matter, excise matter, excise and custom. So all these powers were appellate powers which were within the High Court, which were vested in the High Court traditionally and conventionally. With the development of the society, with the explosion of population, etc., the civil courts were found to be burdens. It was really the civil court was, there's so much of backlog cases, etc., and High Court even. So, there is one more point. Power to create, because under a statute, to adjudicate the disputes under a law, there is a, under Schedule 7, this provides union list, this provides concurrent list, this provides state list. So, the power to legislate on a subject, the constitutional scheme provides power to legislate adjudicative forum in respect of the dispute arising out of that legislation. So the issue has arisen whether the power to legislate, once it includes power to create a court, so analogous to those courts, whether the legislature will create tribunals also, parallel to the civil court system or high court system or Supreme Court as well. So this traditionally and conventionally, the original and appellate jurisdiction of high court and the lower courts, it has been taken to be in addition to the jurisdiction of the High Court and Supreme Court under the Constitution, that is under 226, 227 or 32. This is very important for a reason. We always feel that 42nd Amendment, what it did to the country. When 227, the supervisory control of the courts and tribunal was there, what 42nd Amendment did to the country, that whereas 323A and 323B were placed in the Constitution by way of amendment, empowering the Parliament to create a tribunal in substitution to the civil courts or the High Court. 227 was also amended and the war tribunal was taken away from Article 227. 227 article was amended in such a way so as to take away the supervisory power of the High Court over the tribunal. That's 42nd Amendment, and with that intention, the 323 and 324, 323A and 323B, those were incorporated in the Constitution. The intention of the legislature was clear that it's a constitutional scheme wherein the tribunal has to be taken out of the High Court's jurisdiction. This was not challenged at all. But 44th Amendment restored the position, and the 327 was again restored to its glory, I'll say, and the tribunal's power, supervisory powers were again restored to the High Court by 44th Amendment. So the Constitutional Court of High Court, that is High Court, continued to exercise the supervisory power over the courts and the tribunal. But 323 and 323A and 323B remained there. So these tribunals, the nature of these tribunals, etc., became the subject matter, and when the Parliament enacted central administrative tribunals in substitution to the power of the High Court under Article 226 and 227, so we came across the first Supreme Court in the Sampath Kumar case had the occasion to examine the constitutional validity. And in Sampath Kumar case, for the first time, the Supreme Court said that the constitutional powers under 226 and 227, if the Parliament thinks to create an alternate effective mechanism of judicial redressal, or judicial review is given to an alternate mechanism, institution which is equally effective and akin to the powers of the High Court, then these powers are available to Parliament. This was a thread which was picked up by Supreme Court from Minervaville with Justice Bhagwati's observation. And of course, in Minervaville, Justice Bhagwati, this observation was not a majority judgment. In the subsequently, when it was allowed in Sampath Kumar case, but the manning and the manner of appointment of the members of the presiding officers of the CAT was highly dissatisfactory. and it really became a shelter or resting ground for retired bureaucrats or the bureaucrats who were really to be, or the judicial officers even who were really to be awarded for what they did by when they were in the judiciary or in the executive. So the whole dissatisfactory performance led the Supreme Court to reconsider Sampath Kumar Reddy. Because in Sampath Kumar really, the High Court substitution was in the offer. The Parliament was allowed to do that. But in L. Chandra Kumar case, the court had a rethinking on that, and they said one thing very clearly, that constitutional powers under 226 and 227 are non-compromisable. These powers can't be compromised. But in L. Chandra Kumar case, there is an observation which students of law need to ponder, that they said ordinarily, what is ordinarily? The constitutional powers under 226 and 32 can never be ousted. What does it mean by ordinary? And this is yet to be explained by anyone. But the court, the High Court and Supreme Court started covering the territories after L. Chandra Kumar. And L. Chandra Kumar first time said that 323B and A both are referable to the courts of first instance. Means civil court substitution, not High Court. And they said very clearly that power under 227, because all these tribunals are the tribunals at the first instance, substituting the civil courts, and therefore all these are amenable to the writ jurisdiction or supervisory jurisdiction of the High Court. So all these were placed under the subordination of the High Court. That's what the Sampath Kumar did not hold the field to that extent. But the situation really, because if the writ jurisdiction is, so the government, the executive started smelling a new thing. They said that's all right, this original jurisdiction, power of revisional or reference jurisdiction, etc., etc. So now they already, the conventionally and traditionally, in matter of custom, in matter of excise, in matter of income tax, High Court was having the jurisdiction as an appellate jurisdiction, exercising the appellate jurisdiction. So beneath the High Court, under the appellate jurisdiction, there were quasi-judicial tribunals in the form of excise commissioner, income tax commissioner. These were having the powers of the civil. All these authorities were exercising the power of the civil court while summoning an evidence, summoning a document, etc., so as to procure and so as to impart justice on a list. So these executives had been performing the duties of the judiciary, because judicial functions were being discharged by them. They were all having the trappings of the court. So what central government did, what the parliament did, they said that these are not the constitutional powers. So they did one thing, that these appellate, they started taking one thing they did, that they divested the High Court of these appellate powers and constituted the appellate tribunals independent of the High Court. So again the question came that this doesn't constitute a basic structure of the Constitution, because the statute can provide a remedy, the statute can provide an appellate jurisdiction, it cannot provide an appellate jurisdiction. Therefore these disputes, so this does not constitute a basic structure of the Constitution. But L. Chandra Kumar, that the judicial review is the basic structure. So right from Delhi Judicial Service Association case, Union of India versus Madras Bar Association case, interesting observation was, Supreme Court said one thing on all these matters, that appellate, you can divest the High Court of the appellate jurisdiction. So one thing was clear, that you can create a tribunal, taking away the powers of the High Court in the appellate jurisdiction. I'll come to the latest report. Justice Nariman said a different thing. He said, in Union of India versus Madras Bar Association case, what they said, if the jurisdiction of the High Court was transferred to a tribunal, the stature of the members of the newly constituted tribunal would be possessed of qualifications as judges of the High Court. Whereas in case the jurisdiction and functions sought to be transferred were to be exercised, performed by district judges, the members appointed to the tribunal should be possessed of equivalent qualification and commensurate stature of district judges. Appellate jurisdiction of the High Court can be transferred to the tribunals subject to norms which will be established by the Supreme Court. This is what Madras Bar Association Judgment 2010 has said. Here they said it's a synthesis of two judgments, Sampath Kumar and L. Chandra Kumar, that they said if you want to substitute the civil court by a tribunal at the first instance, then the qualification should not be less than the qualification of the district judge. The stature and the tenure and security of employment, etc. should be ensured. It should be insulated from the interference of the executive and the legislature. Sponsoring department legislating on the subject should be kept away, so that the secretary of the sponsoring department may not have his final say in the appointment of the judges there or the members of the tribunal. And in High Court also they said the substitution would be only on the condition that the members of the tribunal, including the presiding officer, must be to the stature commensurate with the stature of the High Court judges. So they admitted principally they admitted that appellate jurisdiction can be transferred to the tribunal. So when this Entity Act came, National Tax Tribunal, so this was again challenged. But it was challenged, so this judgment is a synthesis of the earlier judgment. There is nothing new in this judgment. But one thing is very clear, when they said that power should be the stature and the security of employment, etc., would be akin to the judges who are being substituted. So, stature, manner of appointment, etc., judiciary has taken over that. Powers and Chief Justice of the High Court and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, depending upon the level the tribunal you want to create a tribunal. Now the judiciary has taken over the powers of appointment. The Chief Justice of the High Court, senior most judges of the High Court, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, senior most judges of the Supreme Court have primacy over the appointment of the members of the tribunal. But Justice Nariman has said one more thing, which is very relevant. It's a minority judgment, it will go a long way. It says that traditionally and conventionally the powers which are exercised by the High Court and Supreme Court, these powers relates to independence of judiciary, judicial review, and question of law if are to be decided by a tribunal. That tribunal can't be created, and that can only be performed, that powers can only be exercised by the constitutional courts, that is High Court and the Supreme Court. And to this extent, that question of law to be decided can't be delegated, can't be transferred to the tribunal. According to me, this is a minority judgment of Justice Nariman. Although they have all concluded that entity is wrong or unconstitutional, but this part of the judgment of Nariman is a minority view, and that's what I close here, because there's a question now. I'm leaving it here and just something to be pondered over by you. Is it a fight between executive and legislature on one side and the judiciary on the other side, and nobody likes to believe each other, the other one, and the problem is of a common man at the receiving end. Thank you.